All right, so in the previous videos, we created an instance of a student named Jason, then saved it and asserted that Jason was successfully saved to the database. So now it's time to find the records that we've created in our database. Actually, there are two ways to find out if a record is in or out of our database. So as you remember, students are saved with their names and particular IDs. So it's possible to find the student that we're searching for by its name or by its given ID. So that's right. You've guessed it. There are these two read operations, very different from each other. First one is a kind of query, and we may have more than one student with the name of Jason, right? So that way we would find all of the possible students with the name of Jason. But if we want to find a specific student, then we can use the second way to find it. So we're going to add tests to understand how to create and to execute these two operations with Mongoose and MongoDB. Now in the test directory, we make a new file named reading_test.js. And it will look like the create record that we have done earlier. We'll start by requiring in the assert library and our student model, then put it in the describe block to describe reading records out of the database. So here we say const assert equals require assert. And then in below, const student equals require source student. So here write describe read the data, an arrow function, and inside of here we can create it blocks. So first we will do our search in the database to find all students whose name is Jason without specifying. So we'll say it find all Jason and pass in a function. So here we want to understand how to execute the query where we find all the Jasons. However, inside the it block, there is no record in our students collection because we already have the test helper file where we drop our collection of students continuously, right? So first, we have to be sure that we have a student named Jason inside the collection to find any student. So for that, we'll need to add a new before each statement inside the describe block right here. So the purpose is to insert a record into the student's collection named Jason, and that's the way that we're going to have some tests inside the file. So we'll just make a new student by saying Jason equals new student name Jason. And below it, we'll write jason.save, since we know that it'll take some time, and we'll add a then statement. So after it's saved successfully, we're going to call the done callback. We reference done by passing to before each. So you see that we didn't put const or var before Jason because I want to access it everywhere in the page, not just in this scope. So I'm going to describe it as a global variable here. Let Jason, and we'll define the variable outside of it so we can execute it. Now shortly, we'll define the variable earlier, modify it in the before each statement, and that's the way that we'll reference it in the it block. So now our setup is done, and we still need to add in a query to reach the students collection in order to be able to find the students that we want with the name Jason. Let's have a look at the diagram. So can you see here, it says that we will use two different query methods in Mongoose library. So the crucial information about these two methods is both the find and the find one. they are tied to our class of student. So we have the access to student.find and student.find1 because we have created a student model. All right, so you see that, right? It means that every model has its own find and find1 functions. Now we see here both functions work by passing them an object with criteria. And criteria is actually about the properties we are looking for. And here we want to find a student with the name of Jason and with a value of string. So the criteria is the same in both functions. The only difference is about the returns they get. Says, I hope you can guess, find on the left is used to find all the students in my collection with the name of Jason. Find1 is the function on the right, and that makes a search in our database and tries to find a record with the name of Jason, and then once it finds, it stops the query and returns that one single record. So in other words, while find finds a big collection of records, find1 finds a particular record. So let's start with find to find Jason's, but this time we're going to write a different asynchronous method here. So in the it block, you know that we write a string and a function. But this time we write async before the function in order to describe it as an asynchronous function. So then after that, we'll define a variable as const students equal await student.find. And then inside of find, we write the criteria that we want to look for. So we look for students with the name of Jason. And let me just explain something here. Now, like I said earlier, these functions are asynchronous. And we used the then method before. But with the new release of the ECMAScript async await, this method was added. So this async describes a function as an asynchronous one, and the await tells the function to, well, await the return of the promise. Now these are JavaScript methods, so we're not going to get into that deeply here. But if you want to, you can always look it up in the Mongoose documentation, and it describes how it's used. And also, if you want to use the then method, you can still use it. But I just wanted to teach you that, and I like to write this block like that. So students.find method returns a promise to us. You know that much. And we've assigned it to this student's variable. Now, in our example, we certainly expect to get only one student, Jason, right? Because, well, we only have one student for now. But you get the process. So right now, we'll write console.log students here before taking any more steps. We'll run our test on the command line. And when the tests have passed, we get a console log here. And as you can see, there's an array here and a student from our database. All right, so that's very cool. Next time, we're going to learn how to make an assertion saying that the student we are looking for is found.